In our headlines on this Thursday, November 13th, here in South Korea, over 500,000 test takers are sitting down for the annual college entrance test today that pundits believe either makes or breaks their chances of entering their college of choice. Meanwhile, lawmakers are gathered at the National Assembly for a plenary session covering over 50 non-controversial livelihood-related bills, such as that aimed at fostering protection for delivery workers. And over in the US, the longest government shutdown in American history comes to an end back on Wednesday after President Donald Trump signs his approval following related votes, first at the Senate, then the House. We start here on the local front where over 500,000 test takers, mostly seniors in high school, are in the process of tackling the final section of a marathon 8-hour examination that determines their path to university. That being said, I have my colleague An Sung-jin standing by at a school here in Seoul to share with us the latest from the ground. Sung-jin, welcome. So what's the latest there as we speak, and what was it like when you got there early this morning, Sung-jin?
Right, good afternoon, Sunny. We can see that students are filing out by one, and as you can probably see from behind me, there's a crowd of parents and families who are here to cheer on their child. But the test is still underway for those who have chosen elective subjects. Now, I've been out here since 7 a.m. to the start of the exam at 8:10, and we've seen students stream into the test-taking site being cheered with signs that say, "Do your best" or "Good luck." Now, luckily, the temperature today wasn't too cold, as temperatures normally drop around Suneung Day. For many students here in South Korea, having a good Suneung score is something to strive for, as it could decide their next steps in their life. This year, more than 550,000 students are taking the test at nearly 1,300 test-taking sites across the nation. Now, have a listen to some of those who came to cheer on the test takers.
I came to cheer for the seniors, and since I also have 2 years left, I also plan to study hard and hope for good results.
There are a lot of students taking the exam today. I hope they don't get too nervous. I came here to support my child.
Now, the number of test takers for this year was the highest in 7 years. The number of those retaking the exam was slightly decreased, though, partly due to the reversal of plans to expand the medical school quota. The Suneung normally lasts for 8 hours, but depending on the number of elective subjects, some students can end up taking the exam for more than 9 hours. Starting off with Korean language, the exam continues with math, English, and elective subjects.
Right, Sung-jin, a daunting examination indeed. Now, that being said, do tell us a bit about the exam's layout by its committee this year.
Right, Sunny, an important component of Suneung is to ensure a distributed balance of questions with appropriate difficulty to properly assess the test taker's knowledge of public education. Now, have a listen to what the chairman had to say during a press briefing.
We excluded questions that would favor those trained in private education and focused on core and fundamental elements of the public school education.
The chairman also added that the committee worked to balance difficulty across electives to minimize potential advantage or disadvantage based on the subject choice of students. That's all I have for now, but I will be back with accounts from the test takers themselves with our later newscast.
All right, Sung-jin, thank you for that coverage for now. In related news, every year on the day of Suneung, stories of moral support for test takers make headlines, and this year was no different. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
A police car arrives in a hurry. Opening the back door, coming out is not a detained suspect. Rather, it's a test taker for this year's Suneung, or the national once-a-year college entrance exam. This is one of 234 examples of police support or escorts that happen on Thursday morning to make sure examinees are not late to take the test, as they have to report by 8:10. Even this accident on a highway early in the morning couldn't stop the police from escorting. The truck blocked the lanes in one direction completely, and a test taker called for help. Police located them and weaved through the traffic, and later said that the caller arrived early to the designated test center about 50 kilometers away. Not only the police, but taxis have helped out with the escorts as well.
I'm supporting them like they're my grandchildren.
At the test centers are juniors cheering for their seniors to perform their best. And just as much as the test takers themselves, parents feel the pressure and nervousness. Hugs are seen at the entrance as the kids take one of their first steps into adulthood.
I'm really nervous as well, but my son will feel more pressure. I hope he doesn't get nervous since he prepared well.
With this exam once a year and the societal pressure, prayers and tears are also seen as the kids enter the 8-hour test marathon with 12 years of education leading up to this day. And with this, the whole nation's support reflects its sincere support for the test takers who are the nation's next generation. 김도현, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, at the National Assembly, lawmakers are gathered for a plenary session covering over 50 bills. For more on this, our correspondent Moon Hye-ryan is live on the line. Hye-ryan, welcome. Do fill us in then.
Good afternoon, Sunny. The plenary session got underway at around 2:30 p.m. this afternoon, with the ruling and opposition parties agreeing to handle over 50 non-controversial livelihood-related bills. With Suneung at the forefront of everybody's minds here in South Korea, the first of these bills included those related to education, such as stronger penalties for university admissions officers who fail to step aside when faced with a conflict of interest. Among the rest of the bills were amendments to the Last Mile Logistics Industry Development Act, which strengthens protection for delivery workers, and amendments to the Motor Vehicle Management Act aimed at preventing electric vehicle fires. All of the bills were passed in just about 2 hours despite the heavy agenda, thanks to a prior agreement reached between the ruling Democratic Party and the main opposition People Power Party. Crucially, the motion to arrest People Power Party lawmaker Chu Kyung-ho was also reported during today's session. He's accused of obstructing last December's parliamentary vote to lift the emergency martial law order. Chu has said he will waive his parliamentary immunity, calling the investigation politically motivated. Lawmakers have agreed to put the arrest motion to a vote on November 27th, when the next plenary session convenes. Today's session also included appointments to the Nuclear Safety and Security Commission, recommended by the People Power Party and the Speaker of the National Assembly. Other appointments requiring parliamentary approval, such as those to the Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights Commission, National Education Commission, and Human Rights Commission, will be addressed at the session later this month. Meanwhile, several fast-track bills, such as a new act aimed at strengthening the competitiveness of South Korea's semiconductor industry, were not brought to the floor today, as both parties continue to seek consensus before the 27th. That's all from the National Assembly for now, so back to you, Sunny.
All right, Hye-ryan, thank you for the latest from the Parliament. In other news, structural reform is fundamental to tackling the persistent decline in South Korea's potential growth. Now, this is according to the president. Our top office correspondent Song Yoo-jin covers his remarks.
President Lee Jae-myung has signaled that bold structural reforms are on the way next year.
경제 회복의 불씨가 켜진 지금이 바로 구조개혁의 적기라고 판단이 됩니다. 정부는 내년이 본격적 구조개혁을 통한 대한민국 국가 대전환의 출발점이 될 수 있도록 관련된 준비를 철저하고 속도감 있게 준비해야 되겠습니다.
At a weekly meeting with his top aides on Thursday, President Lee said such reforms are essential to address what he described as South Korea's biggest challenge, the steady decline in its potential growth rate.
정권마다 1%씩 잠재 성장률이 떨어져가지고 곧 마이너스로 좀 갈 수도 있는 그런 상황입니다. 혈관에 찌꺼기가 쌓이면 좋은 영양분을 섭취해도 건강이 좋아지지 않는 것처럼 이 사회 전반의 문제를 방치하면 어떤 정책도 제 효과를 낼 수 없기 때문입니다.
To restore long-term growth, Lee outlined 6 areas for overhaul: regulation, finance, the public sector, pensions, education, and labor. He placed particular emphasis on the labor sector, stressing that fatal workplace accidents, many of them preventable, must come to an end.
기업들도 이 안전이라고 하는 문제를 줄여야 될 비용이라는 측면에서 접근할 게 아니고 당연히 늘려가야 될 투자다. 라는 인식을 갖춰야 할 겁니다. 관계 부처들이 겨울철 위험 사업장에 대한 안전 점검도 서두르도록 조치해 주시기 바랍니다.
The president's comments come after the collapse of a boiler tower in the city of Ulsan last week, which left at least 6 workers dead and 1 still missing, and has reignited concerns over workplace safety here in the country. 송유진, Arirang News.
On the economic front, the Trump administration's tariff policies prompting widely differing projections about South Korea's economic growth for next year. Our correspondent Moon Ji-young explains.
Major domestic and international institutions project Korea's economic growth rate for 2026 to be between 1.6% and 2.2%. While this range suggests a moderate recovery, roughly doubling this year's average growth rate, significant differences still emerge in their forecasts. The OECD and major global investment banks such as JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and Citibank are at the more optimistic end, projecting a robust 2.2% growth. Their positive outlook is largely attributed to a better-than-expected export performance in recent months. In the mid-range, both the Korea Development Institute and the International Monetary Fund project Korea's 2026 growth at 1.8%. On the more conservative side, the Asian Development Bank and the Bank of Korea both forecast 1.6% growth. This wide range across the institutions creates a 0.6 percentage point gap. The primary reason for this significant divergence in forecasts lies in how each institution evaluates the potential impact of Trump tariffs.
Right now, especially because of the Trump administration, a lot of things are very unsure. So a lot of people are making some assumptions about what will happen next year, which may or may not become true. And that's making a wide dispersion of growth estimates for next year, more than what we usually see.
Despite these varying figures and the looming uncertainties, a common consensus among all institutions is a recovery of domestic demand. The KDI forecasts a 1.6% increase in private consumption for next year, an improvement from the 1.3% expected this year. This indicates a shared belief that while external factors and political developments introduce volatility, internal economic engines are set for a gradual pickup. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump has signed a bill to end the longest government shutdown in the country's history. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young has the latest.
Ending the longest shutdown of federal services in U.S. history, President Donald Trump on Wednesday local time signed a short-term funding bill to reopen the government.
And it's an honor now to sign this incredible bill and get our country working again. Thank you.
This came after the House of Representatives voted 222 to 209 to pass a compromise bill advanced by the Senate on Monday to extend government funding through January 30th. The bill brings back hundreds of thousands of federal workers, resuming major public services from issuing food stamps to managing national parks and air traffic control. However, the package remains a short-term fix, not a resolution, with most Democrats remaining opposed to the bill. At the heart of the deadlock that led to the record 43-day shutdown, the biggest point of contention had been the Republicans' exclusion of healthcare subsidies, which millions of Americans rely on. One Democrat said the fight is not over.
We will continue to fight to lower the high cost of living. House Democrats will continue to fight to address the healthcare crisis that Republicans have created. And House Democrats will continue to fight to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for tens of millions of Americans. This fight is not over. We're just getting started.
While Senate Majority Leader John Thune promised to hold a vote in his chamber on an extension by December 12th, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has made no such assurances, rather blaming Democrats for the government shutdown's fallout.
Absolutely no question in anybody's mind now that the Democrats were responsible for this. They openly admitted, many of them said it in their own words, that they used the American people as leverage in this political game.
With the political standoff expected to stretch on, Congress faces yet another funding deadline for January 30th. Observers say if negotiations stall again, the risk of another shutdown early next year remains very real. Suneung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, over in Canada, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun joined his G7 counterparts for talks on tackling common challenges, including North Korea's nuclear weapons. Also, on the margins of that multilateral meeting, he sat down with his U.S. counterpart for talks about the release of their joint fact sheet. Our Kim Bo-kyung recaps those talks.
Amid the delayed announcement of a joint fact sheet outlining the outcome of the recent summit between President Lee Jae-myung and his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump, the two countries' top diplomats had a brief meetup on Wednesday local time on the sidelines of the Group of 7 foreign ministers meeting in Canada. According to the Foreign Ministry on Thursday, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun has asked U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio to help speed up the release of the joint fact sheet, so that the matters agreed upon during the summit can be concretely implemented. Secretary Rubio reportedly said he would actively communicate with the relevant government agencies to help ensure that the fact sheets can be released as soon as possible. The two governments are reportedly at odds over where South Korea would build nuclear-powered submarines, with Seoul maintaining its stance that it should be done in-country, while U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and others reportedly argue that it should take place in the U.S., viewing it as an extension of the Korea-U.S. shipbuilding cooperation. Meanwhile, the top diplomats of G7 countries reaffirmed their commitment to the complete denuclearization of North Korea. In a joint statement, they condemned Pyongyang's nuclear and ballistic missile programs, reaffirmed commitment to the regime's complete denuclearization, and expressed grave concerns over the North's cryptocurrency thefts, and urged it to resolve the abductions issue expeditiously. When it comes to the Ukraine war, that statement reaffirmed unwavering support for Ukraine. The top diplomats condemned North Korea and Iran for providing Russia with military assistance and China for providing weapons and dual-use components. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
A currency swap agreement between the U.S. and Argentina has been activated for the first time. The deal allows Argentina to exchange its pesos for U.S. dollars to stabilize its economy. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent confirmed that Argentina had already drawn on the swap line. While the U.S. Treasury termed it a small amount, Argentine media citing market estimates reported that the initial portion drawn was some $2.8 billion U.S. dollars. North Korea has condemned Japan for its past wrongdoings as it continues to shun a summit proposal from Tokyo. According to its state media, an academic forum at a social science institute in the regime on Wednesday labeled Japan an inveterate enemy that had inflicted historical pain on its people. Japan's newly elected Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi had proposed a meeting with Kim Jong-un shortly after her inauguration last month. Now, relations between Japan and North Korea remain tense amid their unresolved historical dispute. Back here in South Korea, the country's annual large-scale field training, the Hoguk exercise, will begin next Monday until Friday, following its postponement in October amid the gathering of APEC leaders in Gyeongju. The defensive drill seeks to strengthen cohesion and combat readiness by integrating the Army, Navy and Air Force across multiple domains. Some units of U.S. Forces Korea are slated to join the exercise as well. Now, this year's exercise is shorter than the usual 2 to 3 weeks, as several training sessions will take place simultaneously.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. Starting in the United States, where Democrats on the House Oversight Committee have released emails from Jeffrey Epstein's estate that reference former President Donald Trump. The documents, made public on Wednesday, include a 2019 email in which Epstein wrote to a journalist that Trump knew about the girls. In another email, Epstein told Ghislaine Maxwell that a victim had spent hours at his house with Trump. The White House later put out a statement saying the redacted name in that email was that of Virginia Giuffre, and that she had repeatedly said Trump was not involved in any wrongdoing. Republicans on the committee said Democrats selectively cherry-picked the leaked material to smear the president. The Republicans then released 23,000 pages of documents from Epstein's estate. Trump has repeatedly denied knowledge of Epstein's criminal activities and has said he ended contact years before Epstein's 2019 death while awaiting trial. In Peru, at least 37 people have been killed after a bus collided with another vehicle and plunged about 200 meters into a ravine early on Wednesday. Officials said the crash happened on a stretch of the Pan American Highway in southern Peru after the bus hit a pickup truck and went off the road. Local authorities report 36 people died at the scene and one later died in hospital. At least 25 others, including minors, are being treated for injuries. The bus was carrying around 60 passengers and was traveling toward the city of Arequipa. Police have detained the pickup truck driver, and an investigation is underway to determine the cause of the crash. French lawmakers have voted to suspend President Emmanuel Macron's pension reform, a key concession tied to the country's ongoing budget battles. Parliament approved the suspension on Wednesday with 255 votes in favor and 146 against. This freezes the plan to raise the minimum retirement age and comes as France debates next year's budget. The change still requires a final vote on the broader Social Security bill before it takes effect. The suspension was offered to win support from a pivotal bloc as the government works to pass its budget and manage France's large deficit. Cristiano Ronaldo said in a CNN interview on Tuesday that the 2026 World Cup will definitely be his final appearance at the tournament. The 40-year-old footballer told CNN he expects the 2026 event to be his last major international competition. He said he has spent 25 years in the sport and that he is enjoying the moment, adding that retirement will come, quote, soon. Ronaldo is the all-time leading scorer in men's international football and the only male player to score in 5 World Cups. The 2026 tournament kicks off on June 11th in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Ju Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Today, the day of the National College Entrance Exam, the whole country stayed generally clear and there were no severe cold spells. Even though the morning air was rather chilly, the temperature rose quickly in the afternoon, leading to mild weather. It exceeded the previous year's temperature by 3 to 5 degrees, reaching 17 degrees in Seoul and 18 degrees in Daegu and Daejeon. However, the air continues to be dusty everywhere. The concentration of ultrafine dust will rise to bad levels overnight and will be bad tomorrow morning around some parts of the east and south. Most areas will start off in the single digit tomorrow morning, with Seoul at 3 degrees, Gwangju at 6 degrees. Daily highs will rise up to 13 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 19 degrees in Busan. It will start to rain in central parts of the country and Jeollabuk-do province from late afternoon into the night on Sunday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. Do stay with us and thank you for now.